Welcome to Monster Territory, ladies and gentlemen. Thank goodness for the New England Patriots, because if they lost against the Chargers this past weekend, that might have been one of the most miserable weekends in all of Boston history. We are all still reeling over Alex Bregman going to the Cubs. We're still looking for answers. We're finding out what the heck happened today. Got a few different reports coming out. Few different outlets talking about Alex Bregman out there here today, and it's not helping any bit, right? The more we start to hear about Bregman going to the Cubs and the Red Sox approach in the negotiations, the more you start to get frustrated with this front office. And you know what? We've had a couple of days now to marinate over everything, and that's usually the key for me. Usually, I've said this before, I don't like to react emotionally right away. I like to process things. I like to think things through. And over the last couple of days, really don't feel any better. Usually, there's times where, I'm a little grumpy about something in the beginning, but once I think it through, I'm like, there's maybe some different reasons for maybe that ended up being a good thing in the end, right? But with this one, I can't get around. I can't shake it. I can't get it off of my head. I can't escape the thinking of why didn't the Red Sox get this done? And like I said, we've heard a few things here today, which I'm going to go over in this episode. It makes me think even more so, how did they not get this done? And the front office right now, they are not looking good. The Red Sox, all over the place across the national media, every baseball outlet is thinking, what the heck are the Red Sox doing here? What are they doing? And, I'll say this again. I said this the other night. Good for the Chicago Cubs. That is a winning kind of a move. You could say what you will about how, okay, he's in his 30s. The contract's not going to age well. But you know what? You're out there. You're trying to win championships. You're out there trying to bring a trophy to the hometown. And that's the kind of a move you got to make to go win yourself a World Series. That's a good-looking Cubs team over there. And even though they lost Kyle Tucker, I think bringing in Bregman is going to be great for that team. It's going to replace a good amount of the production that Kyle Tucker brought to the table. But he's also going to bring just strong leadership to the team alongside a few other guys over there. Really liking the way the Cubs are looking. But the Red Sox are reeling right now. They are reeling. Both, I would say, on the field and within the front office. We'll go over the reports here. Let's get to it here. Hope everyone's having a good day today, though. Hope everyone had a good start to their week. I think there's a football game on right now at the time of this show. But yeah, still not feeling all that great, to be honest with you. And you know what's funny about that whole thing is Saturday was such a good day for me. I got to go to Boston, went to Fenway Fest, met quite a few people there. A lot of you came up to me, introduced yourself. It's always a great time being able to talk with people that watch the show. I was even walking the streets of Boston, and I had a wonderful person out there stop me on the street, and we just chatted it up for about 10-15 minutes. I love that. It was a great time overall. Good vibes overall, and then it just ended on the most sour note. And the timing of everything was also very interesting, about how the announcement came just a few hours after the event ended. It was an unfortunate way to end my trip to Boston. But let's get to it here, shall we? Well, the Red Sox, we had gotten reports that, the Red Sox, I'll even say this. I can't believe I'm even going to say this, but remember Marino Papen? Remember he put something out like a week or two ago or whatever it was, saying that the Red Sox had made an offer. I think he even said it was like a 5-year, 160 or something like that. So Marino Papen, I know that guy has been wrong quite a bit, but hey, gonna give him a flower here. He was right about that. And then we get to the report today from Chris Cotillo. The Red Sox offered 5 years, $165 million. That was $10 million less than the Chicago Cubs' winning bid at a 5-year, $175 million deal. The difference was the Cubs, there was deferred money there, I believe $70 million to be exact, but not as stretched out. The Red Sox deferred money was going to be way more stretched out, and the Cubs were giving him a no trade clause. Absolutely Bregman should have taken that deal. Let's go back to about halfway through the season. That's what I'm thinking. All right, hey, we got to get this extension done, man. Why isn't there an extension done? What's going on here? But Chris Cotillo, he did ask Bregman at one point during the year. I believe it was when they were playing the Angels out there in Anaheim. And Bregman told him, saying, hey, it's a priority for, I'm paraphrasing here, for wherever he ended up signing in the offseason, he wanted that to be home for the rest of his career. And of course, a player, who has had a successful career up to this point, who's getting into the latter part of his career, should want a no-trade clause, especially the type of player that Bregman's been. And, especially with the fact that he's also got a family now. Of course he should want a no-trade clause. He's earned that right. And especially, I've said especially like a few times now, but on top of that, you look at what the Red Sox did with Rafi Devers this past year. That's a whole different conversation. We've talked about that ad nauseum. But you saw what they did with Rafi. They traded him. So, there's no guarantee if they trade Rafi Devers, then, my goodness. Mookie Betts a few years ago, a bit of a different situation, but there's no guarantee Bregman ends up staying the entire time in Boston. So, yeah, he absolutely should have taken that Cubs deal. And we even had AJ Pierzynski here today talking on Foul Territory, saying that Bregman became frustrated with the Red Sox because they were unwilling to meet his market after their initial offers. So, the audio for some reason doesn't play here when I have it on the stream, so I'll basically read you the Cliff Notes. Bregman told the Red Sox he had a better market after the Red Sox gave him an offer earlier in the offseason. The Red Sox said, okay, go check out the market, see what else is out there. Red Sox are feeling confident at that point. Remember at one point, a little while ago, Bregman, I know it might sound silly, but he changed his picture on Instagram. I wonder if that was kind of around the same time. Or maybe that's where the frustration started to set in a little bit. Bregman came back to the Red Sox. Maybe it was around this time. Bregman came back to the Red Sox and said, hey, we have a better offer than what you've given us. But AJ Pierzynski was saying the Red Sox weren't buying it. They're thinking he's bluffing. Lou Merlone, he even was on Nesson here today on Boston Enters the Chat, saying that he does think that there were talks going on right in the middle of Fenway Fest. And but still, the Red Sox thought that Bregman didn't have a better offer. Bregman then told the Red Sox, hey, looking like we're going to go sign with another team. And that's when the Red Sox started to panic a little bit. And they upped their offer to 5 years and $165 million. But again, deferrals more stretched out and no trade clause. And without a no trade clause. At that point, the Red Sox, they still wouldn't budge. They're thinking, we don't think he has a better offer. And at that point, Bregman's thinking to himself, all these things are coming into play. The Red Sox are not budging with him. They don't believe him. Bregman knows he has a good offer from the Cubs with a no-trade clause, with deferred money, but not as stretched out, so he gets more money sooner. So he's thinking, all right, they're not gonna budge here. The Cubs want me. And good for the Cubs. That's the team that should get the player. The team that wants the player. The Cubs wanted Bregman more than the Red Sox did. Well, who knows? Maybe the Red Sox did really want Bregman. But the Cubs showed in the end they wanted him more. And they got him. And, it's frustrating to think because a lot of the reaction, from Jared Carrabis out there, Lou Merlone out there, Papelbon, he was talking on Foul Territory here today. Saying that he thinks the Red Sox ownership and the front office were a little overconfident with their approach in negotiating with Bregman. I'll be honest, we were all thinking, man, this has to get done at some point, right? There's no way this doesn't get done. It has to get done. I mean, we were all thinking it. He fit like a glove, but I told all of you how many times look out for the Cubs. I had a couple people over in Cubs land telling me over the last month or so, hey, look out for them. You know, they really want Bregman. They were very interested in Bregman, not just this offseason, but last offseason as well. I had people telling me that, you know, and I think for the Cubs, another compliment that I give them is they made the push for Bregman last offseason too little too late. In the end, they couldn't get it done. They looked back on that, they reflected, and they said, all right, we're not going to make that same mistake again. We're going to give him a strong offer this time. We want this guy. And my reports were obviously right. My sources were obviously right. Not just because they got the deal done, but they gave him the terms that he wanted. Now, you know, whatever the money you can look at, it's a $10 million difference. I really don't think the money was the big factor here. I really don't. I think it was a factor. I think the no trade clause was the big thing. Bregman's got a family, man. He has got a wife and kids. He wants to settle down. He wants to go somewhere where he can win. It was a good situation there in Chicago. And he doesn't want to go anywhere. You know, and if worse comes to worse, you know, maybe he could waive his no trade clause. But at least that's in his court, and it's not going to be out of his control. That's what he wanted, and the Cubs gave him that. My sources were right, saying that they really wanted him. It's not just that they had interest in him. I was told a few times that they were very serious about him, that they really wanted him. And they showed that in the end. It's not just about the money, it's about the terms of the contract too. I think those little things, they go a long way, right? So it is what it is. Again, you've had a bunch of negativity all the way around. I think the Red Sox front office, I think they look really foolish. I think they look silly. I'm not sure if this was a bit of an inexperienced play from Breslow. I don't know if this is just a straight up miscalculation, maybe a bit of ignorance involved, maybe a bit of arrogance involved as well. But I think the Red Sox front office, they look completely ridiculous right now. And this is coming from me, where I'm a glass half full kind of a guy. You all know me. I'm always looking for the positives. I'm always looking for hope. But I think the front office, they shot themselves in the foot. And we'll talk about alternatives here. But to me, if that's how it went down, that they were basically blindsided and they didn't think he had a better offer out there, well, I mean, what are you doing? I mean, to me, like, if I'm in that chair and I really want to bring this player back, again, who knows what the level was exactly of how much they wanted him. Sounds like the Cubs were obviously at 100% that they wanted him. Maybe the Red Sox are at like a 90%. But still, they said, like Papelbon said here, they seemed like to me maybe they were a bit overconfident, especially if they were that close with the money. To me, they should have gotten it done. To me, a guy like Alex Bregman, who showed so much for you on and off the field, basically like a player coach. I know Carabas has said that as well. I've kind of felt the same way. Or a guy that he just helped out a lot when it came to, you know, whatever it was with hitting, even defensively, whatever it may be. I remember I went to a Rays game and, thinking back, I saw Bregman talking with a couple of guys like at the cage. Who knows what they were actually talking about. They could have been talking about whatever. But I don't know. Seemed like to me, because they were both kind of right there at the cage, both had their bats there, and they were kind of just chatting away. I don't know. Maybe that was something. But still, the fact that he's talking with guys, and he's had that reputation of, being a guy that can help out when it comes to, whatever it is, just your approach at the plate, just what what you're thinking about up there, what you should be looking for, whether it's, looking for, pitch tipping, whatever. Bregman's got a high baseball IQ. And that to me is a very undervalued thing. You can look at the injuries. You can look at, I don't want to say injuries with Bregman. It's, whatever. He's had like 2 in the last 5 years where he missed a decent amount of time. But, you can look at the performance. Obviously, that's a big thing. But to go along with just a high IQ for the game, I think that's a very undervalued thing. And he has that. So I just think you lost a lot of intangibles there. And Roman Anthony, he was glowing about Bregman. And you know what? I'm actually going to play a couple of clips here at Fenway Fest. I was in the media scrum all weekend. I was hammering out questions for all of these players. All of the coaches. Cora, Fatsy, Bailey came in. Executives, both Sam Kennedy and Craig Breslow. These people are in there. I'm standing there with this exact beanie on my head. And I think these people in there were probably thinking, who the heck is this guy? I'm just firing away with questions. I'm not, you got Chris Cotillo, Sean McAdam, Rob Bradford in there. You got Nesson, whatever other stations were there. And here's just my doofus self right in the middle of a scrum, just asking a million questions. People are probably thinking, who is this guy? I was wearing a hoodie. I was wearing my beanie. I mean, my goodness. But I wanted answers. I was asking a bunch of questions. And I had a couple here for Roman Anthony. Let me play that for you.
In what ways was Alex a mentor to you?
I think for me it was the preparation side of things. Him, explaining similar experiences to myself. When he came up and when he was a young guy, just debuting, and the parts of the game that I wasn't really great at in the minor leagues was preparing on a pitcher, on a pitching staff, and really diving into what I should and shouldn't be looking for, and I think he helped so many of us with that. And I came up at a time where he was hurt, and he was basically like a coach, and he was like another hitting coach for me. And when I came up and got into that DH role a little bit after we made that trade, I mean, you can pull up the video. He's sitting next to me every second of the game, just constantly showing me different things and helping me prepare. So can't speak highly enough about him and about what he does as a leader. So like I said, hope he's here, but he'll make the decision on his own.
All righty. So as you can see here, the guy was just glowing about Bregman, had just nothing but good things to say. I think the big thing that stuck out said he was basically another hitting coach. That to me is a very undervalued part of the game, because we all look at the stats, right? We're all looking at the metrics, but it's those intangibles that a player brings. And you look at the talent of Roman Anthony, the fact how good of a player he is. He was drawn to Bregman that much, and I think you lose so much right there. It's just sad to see, and it's frustrating with this front office. I'm tired of this front office where they want to they have like this sort of like an arrogance. They have like this sort of like I don't want to say ignorance, because I do believe that, they are some smart people in that front office, but I don't know. I just think they tend not to, I don't know, man. Like they tend not to just read the room a lot. How we've gotten reports, going back to, the last couple of off seasons where, the Red Sox, we've seen reports that they're frustrating to negotiate with, and it's like they do this thing where it's our way or the highway. I mean, yes, half of that should be, but you have to be willing to meet in the middle. And I don't know what it is. Like the Red Sox, it's like they want their cake and they want to eat it too. And I don't get that, especially for a guy like Bregman who brought so much. I don't get that. I don't know why. I get it, Scott Boras. I understand that guy's been playing games and whatever. In the end, the Cubs wanted him more. It's simple as that. I think the Red Sox thought, you know what, we got him. 5/165. He doesn't need the no trade clause. He'll be fine. I hope this was a wake-up call for the Red Sox front office. I do. I hope it was a bit of a smack in the face a little bit. Who knows if that actually was. Breslow, he did talk about in a Q&A after the Bregman left. He was just giving generic answers. It's kind of word salad a little bit. I get it because you can't really say too much anyway, but we want answers, right? We want a bit more transparency, especially with a player like that who we really, really rooted for, I don't know, man. I don't know what it was at the end of the day, but I think the Red Sox do look a little foolish. I think they were caught with their sitting on their hands a little bit, but I hope this is a wake-up call, and I hope this starts to build a little bit more urgency. I don't know. Is it just gonna be same game plan? Same same schedule, same what's the phrase I'm looking for? Same scheduled programming for the Red Sox front office? I don't know. It's frustrating though, and you hate to see a good player like that who meant a lot to this team and the organization, even though it was just for 1 year. The fact that it was just for 1 year. I think when we talk this highly, I think that really showed the kind of impact that he brought. It is what it is. But what is next? What is next? I mean, I feel like we talk about this all the time. Someone comes off the board. What's next? It's getting a little frustrating. It would be nice if the Red Sox could just go get their guy. Circle the guy and go get him. Garrett Crochet last offseason. It should have been him from the get-go. I was definitely all for Max Fried. But remember, we got that report about Garrett Crochet. The Red Sox were crossed off the list. I mean, I think Chris Getz even said that. I think he said that the Red Sox weren't even involved at one point. And then all of a sudden, Fried went to the Yankees, and then they turned around and got him. But why wasn't he circled at the beginning of the offseason? I don't know. It's weird. I feel like Craig, in a way, in the front office, it's almost like they feel like they don't want to fall into a trap. It feels like they don't want to. It's like they don't want to get outplayed. It's to me like I don't know. I just think if you just analyze the situation, give a good strong offer that's fair. I don't think you need to worry about that. I get it. Agents, they can kind of, play monkey business sometimes, but that's another thing. It's like, stop trying to have your cake and eat it too, but also stop thinking you're trying to get played by everyone. I don't know. That's the feeling that I get personally. It's like they don't want to lose. They don't want to lose a deal. They don't want to look foolish, I don't know. We'll see. But moving forward, what is next for the Red Sox? Well, they are going to have to, I think, start to turn it up here, because now you're desperate. And I will say this with the Red Sox over the years. Anytime they've been in a pretty bad situation, they tend to make up for it and then some. We've seen situations like that in the past where they fall short of something and then they're like, okay, we got to pivot here and we have to make sure we don't look silly here. Let's see if that ends up happening or if they just keep going the way they're going. But where I will say it starts, not a free agent, not a trade. I think it starts within. Obviously, they got to look at themselves in the mirror, but you also have to have the talent within the organization take a step forward next year. And I hate to put the pressure on Roman Anthony, but listen, the Red Sox obviously value him highly. I hate to say it, but he is going to have to take a big step forward, right? Because it feels like to me, the Red Sox are putting a lot of stock into him, and that's not his fault. He's obviously very good, but, hopefully Roman grows into being that excellent player that we all think he's going to be. In my personal opinion, what I know he's going to be. The guy's amazing. And I did ask about, where he could bat in the lineup this coming year. Here's the clip.
One topic with you has been, where do you bat in the lineup? You did great in the leadoff spot this past year. Would you like to stay there, or what do you think?
Wherever they put me. Yeah, as long as I'm in the lineup. Doesn't matter to me. Luckily enough for me, I got to hit in the 1 hole, I hit in the 2 hole, I hit in the 3 hole, I hit in the 5 hole, hit in the 9 hole in spring, hit everywhere. So as long as I'm in the lineup with the guys, wherever that may be is out of my reach, but I'll do my best wherever I'm at.
Why do you think you were so great leading off?
I think for me, as a leadoff, luckily I got to get some experience in the minor leagues. But when you're the leadoff hitter, you gotta kind of buy into a different role of doing everything you can and fighting in the box in every which way to just find a way on. And so for me, I was super bought into that, just trying to see as many pitches as I can, for the guys behind me, trying to grind out ABs, grind out my walks, and do damage on pitches that I should do damage on. And I think I did a good job of that in the leadoff hole. But I took a lot of pride in kind of getting the boys going and being in that leadoff hole and being the spark plug in a sense.
All right, so for me, I do think personally that Roman should bat leadoff, but depending on how this plays out, who knows? Maybe Roman ends up batting in that 3 spot possibly. Maybe if Duran is still with the team, maybe you have Duran lead off again. I know he was a bit inconsistent there last year. But if you need a bit more production in the middle of the order there, maybe Roman ends up batting 3rd. You have Duran lead off, and then Story bats 2nd, Roman bats 3rd. That's pretty good protection for Story. I'll say that. And then you have Wilson Contreras batting 5th. So, I could see a situation like that where even though Roman was so good leading off, you kind of wonder if without Bregman, maybe he would be better served batting more in the middle of the order to really help with that run production, right? We'll see what ends up happening. But I thought it was interesting what he was saying there. He just seemed very dialed in, explaining how he felt in the leadoff spot. So Christian Campbell, I'm definitely hoping Christian Campbell can bounce back this coming year. With Christian Campbell, obviously he fell off this past year, but you got to remember coming in to 2025, there was a lot of hype around him. And yes, I understand, where is he going to play? I think eventually that will figure itself out. I do believe that. But he is going to have to get back to what he was doing. This guy soared through the minor leagues. He's got to get that bat right. He's put on some weight. I did talk to him in the media scrum this past weekend, and he definitely looks good. He looks like he's added on some good weight. He's definitely looking a little thicker. I'll say that. He looks like he's growing more into his frame. It did seem like he was starting to. Obviously, the numbers speak for themselves, but you could see where he just seemed a little, I guess, just tired as the season wore on. Right? He just had so much energy in that first, month of the season. Then you just started to see where he was slowing down a little bit, right? Things are looking wonky at the plate. And, combine that with the fact that pitchers were starting to figure him out a little bit. It just ended up being a perfect storm for him. But if that bat gets going again and it gets back to what we were expecting it to be this past year, that's going to be a huge lift for the Red Sox, right? We're all talking about Christian Campbell, being the everyday second baseman for years to come. Who knows? Maybe that could end up happening again at some point down the road, and then Marcelo Myers, your third baseman, and Stories are short. We'll see. But whatever it is, I think Campbell bouncing back this coming year is going to be a big key, regardless of what they do. And then you're looking at Marcelo Meyer as well. I mean, obviously, I'm talking about the big 3 prospects here, but Meyer is going to have to stay healthy. He is going to have to figure that out, right? It looks like he's in some pretty good shape. He had some good vibes at Fenway Fest. I spoke with him a little bit. He's looking pretty good. But the key is he has got to stay healthy this year, right? Got to work on that swing and miss a little bit. Did talk with Peter Fatsi at Fenway Fest, and he said really it just comes down to the swing decisions, right? Just kind of thinking about where he's at in the count. Obviously, being able to recognize certain pitches, right? And just get a better feel. That's kind of the perception that I got from Peter Fatsi talking about it, right? It just comes down to the decisions at the end of the day. But besides the internal, there's my timer. But besides the internal improvements that they got to have, and not just with those 3 guys, right? You would like for Casas to get healthy, maybe contribute in the second half at some point, right? Who knows? He can bring that power back to the lineup a little bit. We'll see what ends up happening with him. I'm not going to have any big expectations of him, but that would be a nice surprise if he could come back at some point and start doing some damage there, start getting some guys taking some steps forward, especially within the pitching staff as well. So there's a lot of opportunities for guys to take step forwards and bounce back this coming year that could help make up that production there. We'll just wait and see. Remember, there still is a lot of talent within this organization, but of course, you still need to go make another move. You got to do it. And option A. Or I don't want to say option A, option B. Plan B. Plan A for me was Bregman. Well, now I got plan B. And we'll call it Plan Bo Bichette. Plan BB. I mean, of course he's going to be Plan B. Now, do I expect the Red Sox to go after him? Yeah. Do I expect the Red Sox to sign him? Probably not. Their activity within free agency has been lackluster. I hate to say that. I really wish that I could say, man, I have confidence. I feel like they're going to really make a push and they're going to have a shot. I don't have confidence with that. They didn't want to go the distance for Bregman. You go back the last couple of years. You go back to Fried last year. They let him go to the Yankees, right? They did pivot to Crochet, obviously. You just go back like a couple off seasons ago. The only guy they landed was Giolito. I don't have the confidence with it. Could this be a wake-up call for them? Maybe. Until I see it, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. But obviously with Bichette, he is the clear replacement for Alex Bregman. And, listen, the offense that he brings to the table, it would be huge for this team. It would be massive. Now, defensively, who knows what that's going to look like, whether that's at second base, third base, whatever. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. The defense at short hasn't been good. The range has not been very good. Maybe he could be a better fit at third base, but I'm not sure about the reaction times with him out there. I don't know. Who knows? But you do know that bat is going to be very good in this lineup. I mean, he basically just replaces Bregman. He did miss some time this past year. He had a knee injury, caused him to miss time in the postseason. So, offensively, yeah, that could be pretty good. Defensively, not so sure. It's going to cost a lot of money. I'm not really sure what to even think of that, when it comes to what the contract could look like. I'm thinking, I was kind of looking at, let me actually go here. I did post this the other day. Let me go. I did look at some numbers. I did crunch some of it. Lou Merlone, he was saying here, let me zoom out there. I cannot, hold on a second. Oh, wow, I'm really zoomed out. All right, so Lou Merlone, I believe he said 9 and 315. I put 8, 279.5. So let's just say 8 at 280. I factored in, if you were to get an 8-year deal, I believe he could put up a 27 wins above replacement over that time, a 4 WAR over the first 3 seasons, 3.5 in 2029 and 2030, a 3 WAR in 2031, and then I dropped it down to a 2.5 in 2032, 2033. Mix in some market bidding that could up the price. I put around 15%. That came out, the WAR value, that came out to around $243 million. And then add 15% of that, which was $36.5 million. That came out to 8 and $279.5 million. Lou Merlone said 9, 315. He's been pretty good at the contracts. So I think, around that, I think you probably end up seeing, if it does get to that length, I think you do see at least the mid 200s, somewhere getting close to the 300 mark. If he does get 9 years, I do think it goes over $300 million. I don't know if the Red Sox are going to do it. I would love to say it, ladies and gentlemen. I really would. But how could we at this point? I don't know. Maybe it could be a wake-up call, but I'm not going to bank on it. Now, Chris Cotillo, Sean McAdam, they did have an article here. What we're hearing and what's next for the Red Sox after losing out on Alex Bregman. Now, the one name that seems to be floating around as of right now is Eugenio Suarez. And, because you think of, obviously, Bichette's going to be very expensive. But with Eugenio Suarez, you kind of wonder if that's the guy that fits more into their comfort zone when it comes to contracts. Yes, he just turned 34 years old, or he's just about to turn 34. Probably not going to get a long-term deal. He's probably going to get, maybe 2-3 years. Based off of the Red Sox activity, that seems to be what they go for. I could see something around that 25, maybe 22, 25 million per year. I could see something like that. With Suarez, the plate discipline is not good. It is terrible with him. He strikes out a ton. Yes, he's going to give you a ton of power, but you wonder, yes, he is 34 years old. He is going to be turning 35 at some point in 2026. So you just wonder, as he starts to get older, when is that power going to start coming down? And with the bad plate discipline that he has, I don't know. It doesn't sound like a recipe for success. Maybe you can get one more good year out of him, maybe two. I think you could still get a good amount of power with him for 1 year. But what's that going to look like in 2027? I don't know. Personally, I'm not a fan of it. Yes, I love the power. I think it'd be pretty fun to have all those moonshots at Fenway Park and wherever they go. But I hate the strikeouts, right? He had, I believe, a 30% this past year with the Mariners and the Diamondbacks. It's a lot of strikeouts. Maybe the Red Sox could tweak something. Maybe they could help him with something. I don't know. They haven't been the greatest organization when it comes to cutting down the Ks. Roman came into the fold, and, they changed the game there. They did help Roman with a couple of things plate discipline-wise over the last couple of years. Maybe they could tweak something with Suarez. I'm not so sure. I'd rather have Bo. I guess I would be okay with Suarez, but, it'd feel a little underwhelming. It just has a weird feel to it. But I also wonder, if you think about Bregman, right? He ended up getting, with the deferrals, right around $30 million per year. I would imagine that's that's obviously where the Red Sox are going to be right around as well. So if you're thinking, okay, where could we spread out that $30 million? Well, Suarez, let's say, let's just say maybe, 23, 24 million, something in that range. Well, that's where maybe you could look to the trade market for a pitcher. A guy that's not going to cost much salary-wise. You look at a guy like Freddie Peralta making $8 million this coming year. Maybe the Red Sox could revisit something with Joe Ryan. We did talk about this, right? We talked about it earlier in the offseason. Maybe the Twins were playing that leverage game. No, we don't really need to move Joe. I don't know why everyone's yapping about Joe Ryan getting traded like we have to trade him. They don't have to trade him. He still has a couple years until free agency. So maybe the Red Sox could approach them again. I don't know. Mackenzie Gore. Maybe you could do something there. That's where I kind of wonder if they go spend on someone like Suarez. I think they would have a little bit more wiggle room to add a guy that's in arbitration, right? And you're kind of around that $30 to $35 million mark with a combination of those two. And wins above replacement wise, it's around the same salary or that as Bregman, right? But wins above replacement wise, you're probably going to get more than what Bregman would give you alone. So that's kind of where you could spread it out between a couple of guys but end up paying the same amount, right? So I could see that. Another problem with Suarez is not just the strikeouts, it's the defense as well. I don't know. It's funny with Suarez because he has had some good defense in the past. But this past year, it just didn't look good, right? I don't know if he was just focusing on the power. I don't know, but you look at the age, he's getting older. Was he just not feeling great in the field this past year or just starting to slow down? I don't know. So you do worry about that defense at third base. That'd be terrible going from Raffy to Bregman, which is a huge improvement, and then back to Suarez. It's like, ugh, kind of wonder about that, I mean, could you do a situation where, Suarez is mostly, your DH, cut ties with Massa? I don't know. Could you trade an outfielder? I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know. But to me, I think if you bring in Suarez, the most likely spot would be third base. I don't know, unless they got creative with the roster. Now, another option, you could trade for Suarez. You could sign Suarez and then trade for an upgrade in the rotation. Or you could do vice versa. So this is where I'm looking at plan C1, which is Suarez and trade for a pitcher, or plan C2, you could trade for a bat and sign a pitcher. Isaac Paredes, they've been connected to. Again, big-bodied guy. Doesn't move great at third base, but, for the most part, he'll get the job done. He'll give you some decent pop. He had 20 home runs. He did miss time this past year, over 102 games. He did hit 20 home runs. So that's a guy that, could probably approach 30 home runs for you at Fenway Park. I mean, he did it in Tampa back in 2023, had 31. He's got that pull swing, fits pretty well at Fenway Park. He had the hamstring injury, though. He is good to go for spring training this coming year. So, it's something you just got to think about with him. But, it wouldn't be the worst option, in my opinion. It's lower on the totem pole for sure. Who knows, what the Astros are going to be asking for at that point. I would imagine they would try to get Peyton Tolley kind of early. I don't think that they would be able to get those guys, but maybe you could do something a little lesser. Let's actually pull up, what a trade for Paredes could look like. Let's take a look-see. So with Paredes, he's got a couple more years of control. You're going to have him for 2026 and 2027. So if we're looking here at the values on BTV, it's not really as much as you would think. The median value on baseball trade values as of right now is $11.5 million. And the thing with Paredes is, another thing to think about too, is he's going to make a decent amount in arbitration if I actually go to the payroll here with the Astros. He is scheduled, he made, I believe it was around like $7 or $8 million this past year. That's probably going to get near around $9.5 million. So he's not going to be like a cheap addition. 9 million compared to the big bats out there, not that much, but still, that is a chunk. No, I don't think it matters all that much. Just something to think about. But because of the higher salary in his arbitration years, that is going to lower his overall trade value, right? Because you subtract the salary from the projections. So he wouldn't cost all that much in terms of talent. So, the Red Sox, they've been trading away guys. They've been trading away a lot of depth, like Hunter Dobbins, Richard Fitz, right? Some, prospects in that mid to lower range. So for Paredes, I think, if I'm the Red Sox, let's take a look. Who's a couple of guys you could possibly send back. Now, I'll talk about the Astros' point of view in just a second. You kind of wonder, I don't think you would have to part with any of these top guys. I really don't. Maybe you could send back Kyle Harrison. If the Astros want another pitcher, could Kyle Harrison possibly be a guy that you send back, right? Again, that's another depth guy. Kyle Harrison, maybe send back like Mikey Romero, something like that. Then you're maybe on the right track there for Paredes. Maybe. But if you were to trade for a bat, Paredes could be an option. You got Brendan Donovan out there. He's going to cost a lot more than Paredes, I'll tell you that. And I kind of wonder with Donovan, I'm not sure if I like... I've talked about Donovan. I've talked about the fit before, But because you don't have Bregman, I was thinking more so Bregman and Donovan, if you were to go that route. Because I do like the high contact bat of Donovan. But with Bregman, he gives you a bit more pop there. Donovan is more going to be a straight up bat to ball kind of a guy. He's going to give you some decent speed. He's going to give you a ton of versatility in the field. But you could look at it where Donovan, if you bring him in, you would have lefty-lefty to start things off. Donovan is not great against left-handed pitching, so that is something to think about. But against righties, you'd have Roman, Donovan, and then, have the guys behind him, right? So, but then again, you kind of look at, would Duran bat third? So then you have 3 straight lefties, So that's kind of where, I'm not so sure about Donovan unless you had another right-handed bat. So I don't know. I feel like I've leaned less towards that over the last couple of days. I hate to do this, but Nolan Arenado, I would laugh if the Red Sox made. I know Donovan's with the Cardinals, but Donovan's different. He's just a much better player who doesn't have a big salary. I would laugh if the Red Sox got Arenado. I really would. If you got Gray, Contreras, and Arenado in the same offseason, contracts that were underwater with the Cardinals, that'd be hilarious to me. I'm not a fan of Arenado at this point. Last year, you could have convinced me. I was speaking of the positives with Arenado, but that was after 1 down year. He's coming off 2 down years now. Yes, he had a shoulder injury this past year, but he's starting to get towards his mid-30s now. He's almost 35. So Arenado at this point, sure, the defense, it'll be fine. I don't want to say fine. It'll be good at third, but what would the bat even look like? Could you even get creative and maybe figure out a way to get Brett Beatty? Beatty, he's a guy that can play second or third base. I don't know why. He kind of reminds me, I'm probably completely wrong about this. He kind of almost reminds me of Jed Lowry in a way. That's probably not a good comparison. I don't know why. I just see Jed Lowry for some reason. Speaking of the Cubs, now that the Cubs have taken Bregman for you, they got a couple of guys here. Nico Horner, right? Nico Horner's going to be a free agent soon. There's question marks right now with the Cubs. What's going to happen with their infield now that Bregman's at third? Where are they going to put Shaw? Where are they going to... Horner's at second base right now, so is Shaw going to be your utility guy? Or do you move Horner in a separate trade and then you got Shaw at second base? Or could Matt Shaw be available? The Red Sox were connected with Shaw in the draft. They were definitely looking at him. And then the Cubs ended up taking him before he got to the Red Sox. So that'd be pretty funny if you ask me. I'm a big Matt Shaw fan. The player that he was in college reminded me a lot of Dustin Pedroia. It just really gave me that kind of energy, like a high energy kind of a player, a gritty kind of a player. He was very inconsistent this past year. Getting him at this point, you're looking more at the potential. So I don't know if this would be something the Red Sox would value. There's more upside at this point than floor. We'll see what ends up happening. I don't think Nico Horner or Shaw make a lot of sense for the Red Sox because Horner, he's going to be more of a contact kind of a guy. Is a right-handed bat. Maybe he can get a little bit more pop with the monster there, play some wall ball. But he's going to be a free agent after next year. And Shaw, I feel like the Cubs would want to hang on to him because he's got multiple years of control left. However, the Red Sox, there are some trade options, right? And then, if they make a trade, maybe they could go spend a good amount of money on a pitcher. Sorry to bring up Framber Valdez with all the problems that he's had this past year with the cross-up situation. Looked like he really hurt his market with that. But he is a guy who's been very good. That could be a big upgrade for the rotation right there. Now, could the whole cross-up situation maybe help the Red Sox? I don't know what his market even is at this point. I feel like I haven't heard anything about Framber unless it's the Mets and the Orioles. So maybe the Red Sox could look at that and be like, hey, we got to figure out what the heck happened with him and his catcher. But maybe Framber could be an upgrade behind Crochet. If not him, maybe Ranger Suarez, a guy that has had a lot of success in the postseason. He's been a very solid guy. He's had a couple of things throughout the years where, something, like with his back or whatever. He seems to just get like some kind of a nagging injury every single year. He's always around like 140 to 150 innings pitched. But Suarez is a guy where, he's had a lot of success. He's 30 years old, just turned 30, where Framber's 32. So, is Framber 32? He's 32. So, I don't know, maybe Ranger, maybe you can get him on like a 4-year deal. I wonder at this point if either one of those guys could be under 5 years. We'll see. Zach Gallen had a pretty bad first half last year. But it did look a lot better in the second half. He's had a good track record before this year. 2023, he was a 5-WAR pitcher. 2022 and 2023, he was over a 9 Fangraph WAR. And then 24, he was right around a 3. This past year, obviously, he really, the numbers came crashing back down. He's given up a lot of home runs. He was giving up a lot of hard hits. The strikeouts were down. But the Red Sox, they have been able to work magic before where they can tweak a couple of things and, maybe get some success. Maybe you can get Gallen on some kind of a cheaper deal. But that could be plan C2. Trade for a bat and then sign an upgrade for the rotation. And that could still, when you look at the cost overall of what compared to the AAV of Bregman, that could be right around the same. Or could you do something with Jarren Duran? Obviously, Jarren Duran, we've been talking about trades. Where could we trade Duran? What could we get back for him? To me, I think there's 2 destinations for Duran. I think it's Kansas City or Cincinnati. Kansas City, I think the only way that works is they do Cole Reagans. To me, if you could do Duran and a couple other solid guys to go along with him and go get Cole Reagans, I'm doing that all day. I'm doing it. And I think that's what the Red Sox would want to do. We still got a lot of offseason left. We have another month before pitchers and catchers report. Keep your eyes out for Duran, man. You never know. If they could get Reagans, that would be amazing. Now, the Reds, they still want to add bats. They have not really been able to do all that much. They added J.J. Bleday and Dane Myers. But that's not really a needle mover for this. Neither of those guys are needle movers for the lineup. They still got some good pitching over there. Remember we talked about Hunter Green, what felt like 10 years ago at this point? You got Abbott. You got Lodolo. Maybe you could do something there. So there are ways to improve this roster. There are ways. And I'm getting back here, circling back to the first option. I don't know why. My gut is starting to tell me that Suarez could be the guy. It just feels like it. I see you in the chat. Green Monster 19. Jaron stays all day. I will say this. I forgot to mention this. Thank you, Green Monster. I will say this about Duran. I do feel like at this point, with Bregman gone, I feel like you probably should keep Duran at this point. And you share the DH spot with Roman. To me, you just lost a good bat. I kind of feel like you need to keep Duran. The only way I'm trading Duran is if I get a stud guy. Reagans or Hunter Green. That's the only way I'm getting rid of him. I just think, to me, Duran in the 3 spot last year, he was so good. He was a lot better in the 3 spot last year. I actually want, if you actually go to the splits with Duran, in batting 3rd last year, he hit 266 over 25 games. But if you look at the WRC Plus, he was, he had a 138. Hold on a second. He had a 138 WRC Plus, and he had an 863 OPS with a 479 on the slugging. So it seemed like Duran was a lot more comfortable there. Now, granted, he was behind Bregman, So he was offering that protection. But to me, I think at this point, it probably makes more sense to keep Duran, especially now that Bregman's not coming back. So that's kind of the way I feel. Again, the only way I'm even doing it is if you get Reagans or Hunter Green. That's it. So that's why I'm going to circle back to Suárez, and I feel like he is, I don't know. I don't want to predict it, but based off of feel, it does feel like he's the guy. And then you go after, maybe you make a trade for a pitcher. Or, again, it could be the other way around. Sign a bat, trade for a pitcher, or trade for a bat, sign a pitcher. I wonder, but you kind of look at the Red Sox, the way their activity's been. You kind of wonder if they're just going to wait and see what falls in their lap. Are they going to keep playing this game of, hey, whatever, we want our cake and we're going to eat it too. So is that what's going to happen here? They're just going to wait for whatever to unfold? I don't know. We'll see. It is a little frustrating. I'll be honest, though. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm not very confident in it. I hope I'm wrong, but I hope Bo is the guy. I don't think he's going to be the guy. I hope he is, but I don't see it. You got the Phillies there. I mean, they jumped into the picture. Dave Dombrowski, John Middleton. Those guys are, I've called them the two-headed monster. When they want someone over there, they have more success than not. I mean, look at all the guys they've been able to bring in. I mean, they brought back Schwarber this past year. You signed Trey Turner, Bryce Harper back in 2019. The Phillies they're just so good at being able to land guys, and they got a very talented team there. If Bo gets a good offer from them, why wouldn't he go there? So to me, the Red Sox would have to beat whatever they would offer, I think, by a good amount. And I don't want to say I don't believe in their ability to do so. I think they could. I don't believe in their willingness to do so. That's the problem. That's where, again, I think about Suárez. We had this here from Chris Cotillo today. I forgot to mention this earlier. According to a source with knowledge of Suárez's market, the Red Sox have indicated they like Suárez, and there's an expectation that he will soon find out whether or not they plan on being serious bidders. About a month ago, they viewed him as a fallback option if Bregman, Polanco, and Marte came off the board. So, we'll see. We'll see. But obviously, everybody, it's, we're still reeling over here. We're still trying to get ourselves together. We're still trying to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and get back on our feet. But man, oh man, this was a tough one. Lots of fallout, lots of reaction. The front office, they're getting pummeled. And rightfully so, I think. Rightfully so. I think they should be. And I really hope, I'll say it one more time, I really hope they got a slap in the face. I really hope they got a wake-up call. Do I believe that they did? I don't know, probably not. But who knows? I hope they look at themselves in the mirror because they really got to start. They got to stop playing these games. And they got to just go start going after guys and putting the best team on the field. That's all I got to say. But everybody, I am out of here. That's all I got here for tonight. I know I rambled there. I know I was kind of bouncing back and forth. My potato brain. That tends to be how I work. But hopefully I went over as many options as I could. If you have any other options, let me know down below in the comments after the show is over. If you come on the way out, hit the like button for me. Subscribe if you're new. Really helps out. We actually also got to 6K subscribers this past weekend. So thank you for that. Do appreciate that. That's awesome. Let's try and get to 7K. Can we get to 7K by opening day? Maybe. We'll see. But 7K is the next goal. Everybody, go have yourself a great night, and I'll talk to you next time.